Hi, Zizaran here with another build guide for the 3.22 League, and this is the return of Explosive Arrow. There has not been a big meta shakeup on leveling skills, so that means that Explosive Arrow is still just as good as before. It is in fact slightly better because there's been a bug fix where we get 10% more damage mitigation from the champion ascendancy. This is a build with very few downsides. The biggest downside is that it's not like instant damage. You have to put down a totem, then the totem has to explode on the target, and then the damage happens. That being said, it feels incredibly smooth, and as you can see in the background when I'm running through the map, I'm just like running, putting down totems. Prolif feels amazing. You can do all Uber Pinnacle bosses on this. Obviously there are builds that are even better for it. What's so special about Explosive Arrow in my opinion is even though it's a starter, you don't actually need to switch to another build. You can do everything, and just a really fun build to play. It's a great powerhouse to have to like fall back on. Another downside that can be a little scary if you're SSF is Didian Dawn can be a bit of a pain to find. Rain of Splinters is a pain to find. You have to like Val Crimson Jewels to get them, but it's not necessary. If watching these videos helps you have a good league start, please consider subscribing to the channel as it helps me and my team a lot. Shattering Steel, etc. has been nerfed a little bit, so we're using Spectral Throw, which means that you do need to use actual melee weapons. Remember the recipe with Rustic Stash can be either rare or magic, and then you need a whetstone and a weapon. Generally we use two-handers, and then at level 28 you can switch to Explosive Arrow. It should work really well. Then you're gonna be just using a short bow with attack speed, and yeah, it like honestly plays really well. You'll be able to watch me do this most likely live. I'll probably do everything explained for it too. So for how to play Champion Explosive Arrow, it's super straightforward. You are running around just placing down your totems. You want to make sure all 6 are up for bosses, but you only need 1 or 2 for clearing. And honestly, it's just great running through, clicking your flasks and watching everything die. For bosses, you can use your Flame Surge Arcanist brand thing. That'll also throw flammability down. And some people like using Infernal Cry. You don't need to do this for clearing or anything. It would only be for doing the Covered in Flames for bosses. I personally never use it because I've never had a damage issue on this build. I haven't fully decided yet, but I might be doing everything explained for this build as well. If you don't know what that is, it's basically a between 5 and 7 hour playthrough that people can play along to. Kind of like Bob Ross, but PoE. And it'll explain everything as if I was a completely new player. If you haven't used Path of Building before, we have a video that we can link to here that you can see how to use Path of Building. Very important program, and you can see that we are doing our normal step-by-step skill tree. So if you haven't seen that before, it like guides you through how the skill points work. And you can see there's very minimal respecs, so you're not going to need to farm a bunch of regrets. At the end game, we have 2 different trees, one for if you find a natural instinct and one if you don't. And if you do find an unnatural instinct, you're going to have some dex issues. We'll get to that later. You can see here with max sustainable fuses, we have around 5 million DPS. And that's with like pretty mediocre gear. I think the most I've ever had was either 11 or 13 million on a really like maxed one. And that's very tanky. I also had like 6.8k life, I think. So they can get pretty beefy. It's also a good target for things like Eternal Damnation. Now, there are Explosive Arrow Elementalists as well. I know Pastron has made one in the past, and they're really good too, but you do die a lot more. Obviously, Elementalist is nowhere near as tanky as Champion. Since Champion already gets so much defense and damage, it's just a really great starter. And we've had so many positive feedback from softcore players that are like, wow, I'm not dying and I'm killing everything. So important, like, really want to make this very clear in this guide because there's always somebody fucking it up. Attack speed's the #1 most important thing. Just as a quick example, I'm actually going to show you the difference. So here we have basically the same bow, but on a Citadel, and you can see the damage goes from 5 million to 3.9. And this isn't even completely accurate, but accurate enough. Yeah, you lose like 30% damage from that attack speed, and that's because the way EA works, with you ideally want 20 explosions. And if you want to know how to calculate the explosions, I'll show you real quick. So to figure out the damage and how many fuses you're doing, first you're doing the amount of totems. And you have 6 totems. I'll show you how to get 6 after this. But you have 6 totems multiplied by your attack speed, which is up here, 2.49. multiplied by your skill effect duration. So this depends on, for example, we have a duration mastery we can take. You can use malevolence. Actually, getting too much can be bad because it'll take longer for the fuses. So that's why a lot of people play with malevolence for bosses. And then 353, that's the buff duration, +1. So we're 1 fuse overkill without malevolence. You'll sometimes see build guides will give themselves 6 free arrows. That's insanity. That's never going to happen in an actual fight because your totems are going to be down and stuff. So we try to be very conservative with calculating the 20 fuses and making sure that you get those. So with this, even without malevolence, you can see that we're getting 21 fuses because it always like starts counting as soon as 1 is down. And another thing that gets asked a lot, how do we get 6 totems? So you get 1 totem from Ancestral Bond up here. You get 1 from Panopticon down here, and then you get another from Anointing Watchtower up here. So that's all 6. Another thing that's important to know for the build is Elemental Equilibrium. So the way this works is because our skill has like a 2-set hit kind of. You have the initial hit where the arrow goes into the target, and when that happens, it's being hit by Elemental Equilibrium. So you want to make sure that the initial hit has no fire damage. So make sure you have no flat fire damage on your rings, no flat fire on your bow, or your quiver or your amulet. And as long as you have cold, lightning, or both, you're getting minus 25% resist on the enemy. So that's pretty big, large amount of damage. You can see it's 1 million damage here. Now, it's not as bad as before to fuck it up. You obviously aren't like buffing their resist anymore, but you definitely really want this. And another thing worth mentioning as well is Elemental Overload and Precise Technique. Because early we're using Precise Technique, and the way this works is if you say you have 600 life but 900 accuracy, then you're getting 40% more attack damage. But if you have 700 life and 500 accuracy, this does nothing except that you can't crit. And later on, when you have Elemental Overload, make sure that you don't also have Precise Technique, because you can't have both. Because Precise Technique makes that you can never deal critical strikes. And if you're wondering how Elemental Overload looks now in your returning player, there's no longer a buff in the top left. It'll be a diamond on your explosive arrow skill itself in the bottom right, and it'll be up pretty much the entire time. Now, once you switch to explosive arrow, you're just using a mana potion, and I usually end up switching to life tap somewhere around level 45-ish has been where I've been switching, but it's a bit of a comfort thing. You can switch later if you want. You don't really want to switch earlier because you're not going to have that much regen, and yeah, it's nice that you can put life tap on everything and not run a mana flask, but your life's kind of ping pong a lot. Getting some regen early will help with that switch a lot. Now, I'll walk you through the endgame EI setup. So obviously, very, very important that we have a 100% chance to ignite. Quality on explosive arrow is very important for this. This is different than the Elementalists. They don't need that. So you do actually want a level 21-20 explosive arrow. This is why you'll see I'll always be leveling 6 explosive arrows in my offhands. You just buy 2 green weapons and buy 6 explosive arrows. Once they hit level 20, I usually flip them. What that means is I'll sell the level 20 gem with 6 TCPs, so 1 each. And that'll turn it into a level 1 but quality 20, so you don't need 120 gem counter prisms to get them 20 quality. Level them back up to level 20, and thankfully this goes so much faster lately because there's a new rare monster reward that's random that'll just boom level up all your gems. It's a very, very big damage boost. You can see here it's like 500,000 damage just from the gem level. We're obviously focusing hard on gem levels. It's on our weapon, etc. You can also get in on amulet, so very, very big. I'll walk you through with the utility as well. So we have Frenzy with Life Tap, Blink Arrow, and Culling Strike. And we also have Infernal Cry in here. You don't need to do that. You don't need to use that. I never do because I always feel like I have enough damage and it's kind of clunky. But if you're killing like Eater Worlds, etc., using Infernal Cry to cover them in Ash can be pretty good if you are struggling on damage. So also do note, we don't need a 6-link for this build at all. If you find one, save it for another build or sell it to buy something else. So really, really don't need one. You don't need a 4 or a 5-link. Here we have Determination, Grace, Skitterwatts, and Malevolence. You can see that Malevolence is not activated. Now, obviously, it does give you a lot of damage. But what we do is we try to get a white socket. You can get this by having Varishi in Betrayal and Research. And once he's there, he'll give between 1 and 6 white sockets on the item. So I usually do that on the helmet, for example. And I hope that the green socket goes white. Now, when do I swap between Grace and Malevolence? So anytime I'm killing a boss like Awakener, Eater of Worlds, Exarch, etc., I don't need Grace. It's not going to auto-attack me that much to begin with, right? And then I'll rather have Malevolence, and that gives a large amount of damage. So very, very good. Skitterbots, it's good on pretty much any build. It chill and shocks the boss or anything you're fighting. And yeah, it's pretty huge. It also slows things down. And obviously Determination and Grace, huge for mapping. Determination is just huge in general. Now, here we have the Flame Surge, Arcanist Brand, Life Tap, Flammability setup. This is very important. And if I turn off all this, you can see right now we have like nearly 5 million damage. If I turn off all of this, we go down to 2.6 million damage. So it's a very, very large part of our damage. That's because the Flame Surge will do like a little damage over time on the ground. It counts as reflect damage, so it's not even yours. It's just huge, 25% more damage. And flammability as well, as you can see, is a huge part of our damage. Finally, we have Cast on Damage Taken with a Molten Shell, or a Val Molten Shell. That needs to be level 10. If you have it higher than that, the Cast on Damage Taken will not proc it. We also have Life Tap and Flame Dash. Now, it's very important that Flame Dash has a higher required level than 38. If you have flipped the Flame Dash to say that it's, you've hit level 20, you've flipped it to level 1 again, now it'll start getting automatically casted by your Cast on Damage Taken, and you won't be able to manually use it. It's super annoying. But as long as your Flame Dash is higher level, then it's fine, and they're just sharing the Life Tap. That's why we have them in the same link. So, as you can see in our EA setup here, we have 7 gems. Now, Empower is really good once it's level 4. At level 3, it's actually not that much better. We can compare it with Elemental damage with attacks here. You see we have 3.5 million with nothing, 4.8 with Empower level 3, 4.9 with Elemental damage with attacks. So this means that it is only an upgrade if you have a level 4 Empower, which can be really, really hard to get. So don't sweat it too much if you can't get one. But Empower is great if you do have a level 4. You can replace your Ignite Proliferation with Elemental damage with attacks if you have an Empower. And obviously there's loads of good Awaken gems for this build. You can see we haven't included any and we still have great damage. This is a build that I normally do farm all the Awaken gems for. We have Awaken Elemental damage with attacks, Awaken Burning damage. That's actually something really good to replace Ignite Proliferation with. We can show that now. Here you can see Awaken Burning damage. This is huge for the build because obviously it's 40% more burning damage, but +1 as well. So this actually takes us to 6.2. So we have so many good Awaken gems for this build. You can use Burning as long as you have Ignites you inflict spread to other enemies within a radius of 12. That's using red Eldritch currency. It's the Ember on gloves, and there's some RNG to getting this, but it's huge. I tried to do that very early just to free up the Ignite Prolif gem, and obviously make sure you have a 100% chance to ignite. It's very important for this build, but yeah, very, very good. And again, Diadian Dawn, Ancient Orbs on belts, and things like that. It makes it pretty okay to get, and obviously Wedding Gambling as well. And this is great because you wouldn't mind getting a Mage Blood anyway. Surprisingly, you wouldn't use a Mage Blood for this build. It's not very good. Diadian Dawn is like 42% of our damage. You can see our damage like tanks. We lose like nearly 2 million or 1.6 whatever whenever we use Diadian Dawn. And remember to use Catalyst quality. You can use either Elemental or Attack. You can't mix and match. You have to use 20 quality of one, but that is another 7% more damage. And the reason for that is because you're always renewing the Ignite, and it's always going to last long enough that it's always up. So Ignites you inflict with attacks deal damage faster is a huge thing for this build. Flasks, you can see we have a bubbling or seething, so either half instant or fully instant, with usually corrupting bullet immunity, a granite, a movement speed, reduced curse effect, and reduced shock. I usually get freeze immunity from the Brian King thing upgraded, the Pantheon, and yeah, so very, very good. If you go to the notes section, there are loads of Q&A set size made here. And we talk a little bit about the changes. Everything that you should need should be here. This is also potentially what I'm league starting. I haven't fully decided yet. Might try the new shout thing. This is like my new Essence Drain build. It just really is such a like fun, nice powerhouse. And I just love having this. Is like if any of my other builds die, I fall back on this kind of thing. Really, really good. Oh, one thing I want to explain. Quill Rain is absolutely great. And that's because early on, we are hit-based. Early on, we have like different bow masteries. If you have a Quill Rain, you get the increases and reductions to projectile speed, also apply to damage with bows. This doesn't work when you're actually using Ignite, but early on, we're fully hit-based. And then it does work. So it's a huge damage boost for Quill Rain. If you actually get like a 100% roll or close to, Really, really good. And remember, if you want to Rain of Splinters, you need to Vol Orb any rarity Crimson Jewel. It can be rares, whites, blues, whatever you feel like. And then for jewels, you have so many stats you can use, like attack speed with bows. I think you can use damage with 200 weapons as well, increased damage, burning damage, area damage. There's so many things you can get on jewels. And then the Pantheons I use is Brian King and Garakan Bandits. We kill all of them. Now, there's never a wrong choice to help a Lyra on day one, but it's so easy to gear this build. I usually don't bother. Also, we don't fully have the numbers on things like Sadism. It's a new support gem, but it might be better before you have Died in Dawn. We'll find that out once we actually have numbers, but a very important thing for this build is don't get +1 arrow. You always want to have an odd amount of arrows on this build. That means you want to either fire 1, 3, 5, etc. The reason for that is if you're firing 2 arrows, you're firing a V around your enemies. And another thing that people fuck up a lot is you don't want to have Pierce. You will literally do 0 damage because your arrow will go straight through the enemy and there will be no explosion. Hope we've answered everything. Absolute powerhouse of a build. I hope you guys continue enjoying it. And yeah, sub if you liked the video. We also have like the new membership thing on YouTube if you want to support the YouTube videos and it helps you have a good league start. But either way, thanks for watching. Sub if you liked the video, but more importantly, try to die less than I do.